Guys, this is not a drill. There is a new Half-Life game coming out. It's for VR specifically, but I'm very excited about this for obvious reasons. We're going to talk about it today, and I think it warrants using a sound effect. I promise in the future I will use these extremely sparingly, but I think a new Half-Life game is enough for that. That's right, the air horn. Anyway, so this is the best write-up we've had, I think, of all the articles I've read. The one from Ars Technica is my favorite one. It goes into extreme detail that we can go over. All this, a lot of times, is rumor at this point, but we have had an official tweet from Valve stating that we're excited to unveil Half-Life Alyx, our flagship VR game, this Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So this is all the official announcement we've had, this one tweet from Valve, but there have been a lot of sources apparently talking a lot more about this to the media, so we can go over everything in this article as well, which goes a lot more in depth and is really the main focus right now. What's interesting to me is this is the only tweet on Valve's Twitter page, and I thought, did they delete all the other tweets to make it more apparent when someone went on this page? But no, I went on the Wayback Machine and looked, and even as far back as July, this Twitter account was not active at all. I don't know why this archive is in German, but literally it was a protected account. It says, my German's a bit rusty, but it says these tweets, the tweets of this account are protected, and it says only protected account followers can, or only allowed followers, blah, blah. And literally the name of the account is ABCDEFGH. So, and then the description is 123. So they were not using this account. They brought this account, I don't even think it was verified, because you can't have a verified protected account. They brought this account alive just for this specific tweet. I mean, this should tell you how big of a deal they are making this. So let's get into this article and why I agree with most of what they say in here. So it says sources confirm some details ahead of the Thursday reveal. So the actual reveal is going to be on Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific. I think I mentioned that already. So basically, this was actually leaked like the day before or several hours before the official announcement, and it was apparently, I believe, PC Gamer might have broken it. But so there was apparently some leaked transcript of an interview from someone named Geoff Jeff Cayley. I'm probably butchering that name. He's the creator of some documentaries about Valve games, and basically he was quoted in this transcript as saying March 2020 Half-Life Alyx is coming out. So that was the first so-called leak. There was no official confirmation by Valve at this point, and I believe like several hours later, literally the same day, is when Valve issued this tweet, and obviously this went crazy. I think it was trending on Twitter, and on Reddit it was like a top post on all. So it is a VR-only game, apparently, and it was rumored over the past few years, and finally it is now officially being released. And here are the details that we have from leaked sources. It says, in Half-Life Alyx's case, it's going to be a prequel, not a sequel. And it's a full single-player campaign, brand new VR content, and the sources can't confirm how long it will actually take to beat. But Valve did specifically say our flagship VR game. So I think they are going all in on this. I don't think this is going to be some sort of demo. I think this is going to be a full-fledged game that they know VR is not exactly the most popular thing right now because it's expensive to get into. I think they understand that this needs to be a full flagship game that is enough to get people to buy several $100s worth of headsets on top of a new PC they may own. So you will play the game from the perspective of Alyx Vance, one of the main characters of the whole Half-Life series, I'm sure you know, and it will rewind to the period between the first two mainline Half-Life games. So I don't know where this occurs in respect to all like the expansion packs and all that, but it's going to be between the first and second game, I guess. So at the end of Half-Life 1, I believe the G-Man basically teleported Gordon somewhere, and you kind of just wake up in Half-Life 2 on the monorail, and I don't know where he was the whole time. I guess that's the whole thing. I didn't play anything except Half-Life 2, the episodes. So Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe he was in any of the other ones. And then in the expansion, obviously, again, this isn't the first time a secondary character became a main character, because we had the guard Barney in Half-Life Blue Shift. So here's some other details. Apparently, the gravity gun is going to be replaced in spirit by the gravity glove. So gravity, you gotta grab. Anyway, so this is a good point. It says Half-Life 2 is arguably the gaming world's first physics adventure, and the gravity gun was a extremely central part of all that, and kind of became an icon really in the gaming world, and it was really cool. So now they're going to be using the idea that a lot of VR games have these hand controllers, literally. So now you'll have gloves that are basically, each one, I guess, will be a gravity gun, and they say it's going to be more accurately described as magnet gloves. So in the players will magically point and attract distant items to your hand. I think this is really cool, because if you, even with the Oculus Quest, where you're not tethered or anything, you're limited by your play space, and even walking up to an object to pick it up, if you don't have a big enough play space, then you might bump into things, you might reach the grid, and then you have to use the controller to move your character. It can get weird, but if you have a thing that can literally just magnify things towards you, I think that's kind of a good way to reverse it. And obviously it says here a spiritual successor to the Half-Life 2 gravity gun. It says, however the system works, it seems to both favor the new Valve Index controllers, which straps to the user's knuckles and leaves fingers free to move around. I have a picture, you can check them out here. So this is where you can see the strap on this side, and you can see here examples where I guess every single finger is controllable. Now on the Oculus controllers, there is a little bit of capacitive detection. So if you're holding it like this, the controller can tell whether your finger is resting on this button, for example, and this button, for example. So, and also even these buttons on the front, so they're all capacitive, so you can still hold it and control individual fingers, at least a couple of them, to a degree. So it does actually say in the article that it will offer concessions to older controllers like the HTC Vive wands, and I'm assuming other controllers like this that do have capacitive controllers. They have to be able to support other controllers besides the HTC, because obviously they know, well, Steam VR does already support other controllers, but I'm certain that they probably developed the game with these other types of controllers in mind as well, because they know not everyone has an HTC Valve, or the Index from Valve, because it's the newer one. A lot of people didn't want to upgrade from the Vive, so they certainly will support it, but probably the best experience will be from the Valve Index controllers. And they say also, we hear that most every object in the game's world will be designed to be touched and manipulated by hands, both in terms of realistic physics and how real hands move through virtual objects, which is really cool. Obviously, I mean, I would hope that, but it's cool that they say most every object in the game. So it's going to be kind of like a pick up that can, citizen situation. We might have like a callback to that. I don't know. And so this is really exciting to me, and it seems like they're kind of building this how you would hope, where if you're going to be having gravity gloves and you're going to be doing VR, the most realistic way to make a VR game is to be able to interact with as many things as possible. Otherwise, it kind of breaks that presence and immersion. And here's another really good part of the article, and this is where I'm kind of talking to people who are really skeptical, and they say, oh, it's a VR game, like it's just going to be like a demo. I think Valve understands those criticisms that could potentially be coming their way. And even a couple of my friends said, oh, it's a VR game, I don't want to have to go out and buy a VR headset for this. I think they probably literally designed this game with that in mind. So this article says, the author of this article, by the way, is Sam Machkovech. So these are a lot of his words. He says he thinks this new game will be a masterclass example of how to build an adventure game around the unique features of virtual reality hardware. I think this is exactly correct. I think Valve knows that so many games, like this author says, have been really, they feel like demo games. They don't feel like full games. they feel like it's kind of like one cool feature thrown in and a whole game built around that one feature, if it makes sense, but the rest of it hasn't really been fleshed out. I think Valve built this from the ground up to be an all-encompassing game that is going to kind of shake things up in the VR world and make it so this may be, or at least I'm sure this is their attempt to make a game that makes it worth it to jump in to VR from the ground up. People who have never had a VR headset before, I think this is going to be their attempt to get people to jump into that. And I don't think they would make a Half-Life game if that wasn't the case. I think they would be risking too much to put out a mediocre game. And Valve has been the leader in VR. I believe they were like literally one of the first companies to really get in on VR. Besides Oculus, they kind of came afterwards, but Valve for the longest time had the VR room with the stuff on the walls I remember people talking about. So they've been probably working on this much longer than most people think, and they probably had their eyes on making a Half-Life VR game for a very, very long time. And it does say that Valve's first game built from the ground up to tap into the company's long-term Source 2 engine. So it's going to be using Source 2, and he says it's hopeful this will be a whole new caliber of facial animations and world details, blah, blah. Much like how Half-Life 2's first use of the Source engine blew games away in 2004. So Half-Life 2 was kind of like a revolutionary game in terms of like physics, and it was really impressive at the time. And I think this is going to possibly be like that, except with VR. I think Valve recognizes that VR at some point has to become extremely important to gaming, because I don't know if here's the thing, if you have never tried a VR headset before, it's much more than just like having a screen taped to your face. And then when you add these controllers, when VR first came out, it was super cool. It was actually amazing. It really felt like you were there. And then the addition of these controllers, I would say the jump from using VR without controllers to controllers is the same jump as it was from a 2D screen to using VR. It really is that big of a difference. So the ability now that every VR headset has with controllers, I think if you've never tried it, it's something to behold. And I think people who have never used VR before and they're going to be getting into a Valve-made flagship VR game, I think this is going to be, at the very least, extremely impressive to people who have even played VR before. And I think for people who have never played VR before, this is going to be like, this could usher in, potentially, this might sound hyperbolic, it could potentially usher in a new generation of VR games where if Valve does this right, and they've been working on this for a long ass time, then other games might say, oh, that's how you do it. Because there have been a lot of problems with locomotion, how to move in the games, and I'm sure that Valve has been working on these solutions for a long time. And I think there was at one point in this article, I don't know where it is, but there was a presentation by Valve where they literally went 30 minutes on an explanation of how doors work in VR. So they go in extreme detail of how to work every single thing in VR, because it's a different ball game altogether than 2D. It's completely different. So I'm really excited about this. Obviously, this is all we know, and this is kind of a long video already, 13 minutes long at this point, based on this tweet being the only official announcement, but it seems like we have a lot more details. I am obviously going to make something talking about the announcement that we have on Thursday. I might even put it on my main channel, but hopefully this gives you a little bit of information, at least on this channel. So I hope you guys are excited as I am. I am stoked that the Half-Life 3 confirmed meme is actually going to be revived. I think this is super exciting. The Valve has not killed off the Half-Life franchise, and it's like, oh, don't give me hope that there will be a Half-Life 3, but who knows? It might end up being a VR game if this it might be 10 years from now when VR really is the mainstream, but I don't know. I think hopefully this means that we will get a Half-Life 3 eventually. So yeah, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Are you excited? Oh, I forgot to mention this. This is the Valve News Network, who originally, he's been talking about some VR leaks for a long time. So I've actually watched his channel before, and he was talking about how the gravity gun was actually kind of discovered. I don't know if he discovered it, but it was in some game code leaks. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I'm super excited about this. I can't wait till Thursday to see what they announce about this. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video I make about it, whether it's on this channel or the next. And for the next video, if you guys want to check out, I'll put a link somewhere around here. So be sure to check that out. So have a good one.